Welcome to Designing Purpose, your guide to finding and pursuing the career you were meant for, with me, life and career coach Brooke Cretz. Want to know the scariest part about leaving your job? The unknowing of what's next. But what if it were possible to leave the job you hate and pursue something that feeds your soul while still meeting your financial goals? On Designing Purpose, I will guide you step by step to leave jobs that no longer serve you and connect to the career and life you were meant for. Join in for powerful stories, examples, and guidance to go from feeling stuck in the unknowing to confidently transitioning to your next career. The Designing Purpose show starts now. So throughout the purpose journey on Designing Purpose, we have spoken a lot about your specific experiences, feeling disconnected from your purpose, reasons you felt you couldn't leave your jobs, how to detach from those idealized versions of yourselves that kept you in situations longer than you should have, and the ultimate decision framework for leaving your job. We also talked about how you can create the guidelines to connect with your purpose, discover how you want to work, whom you want to work with, and what your ultimate purposeful career is, as well as how you can experiment and build meaningful relationships with your people to make your purposeful career a bona fide reality. But what we haven't talked very much about is how you can do all of this in the unconditional love, encouragement, and thought partnership of a few trusted people in your life, whom we will call your purpose support team. You'll hear these individuals called many things, your board of advisors, your board of directors, etc., but really they all accomplish the same goals. Acting as people who know you really well, trust in who you are and what you have to offer, and are willing to contribute any advice and guidance they have as it aligns with your best interests. Your purpose support team can be and is usually more successful when it is small. And even 2 or 3, but as many as 5 people can be part of this core purpose support team. And strong purpose support teams contain people who know you really, really well, perhaps also for a long period of time. People who are open-minded, empathetic, and trusting of who you are and what you have to offer, even when we don't have all the answers. Perhaps people who have some sort of knowledge, expertise, or connections to what you want to do, although not necessarily. And people who enjoy acting as thought partners or soundboards for ideas or contributing in other ways to make your career or business a reality. These can be literally anyone, such as family, friends, colleagues, or former colleagues. But there is one person who, while not imperative, is very, very helpful if part of your purpose support team, and that is your partner or spouse. Again, while this is not non-negotiable, and there is quite a bit you can do without immediate partner or spouse buy-in or support, having them on board and willing to play the role criteria we outlined above will go unbelievably far when it comes to how quickly and effectively you can reach your purposeful career goals. But from the experience of many people who I have coached, this is not always easy, especially at first. And this can cause a lot of frustration, deflation, and doubt around pursuing their purpose to the point where, without this support, it might not even happen. And I began noticing very common themes within partners and spouses' initial reactions or attitudes, which contributed to this frustration and doubt. And these included, why would people even come to you when so many other people do this? How would you get clients? Are you sure? You don't know anything about starting a business. Have you thought all this through? There are a lot of risks. You really can't leave your job without a job lined up. I know you're feeling overwhelmed, but that's what has to happen. Don't you think things will get better soon? Do you really think it's worth it to leave now? Give it some more time. What you're talking about doing is really hard. You might want to do it in a few years when you feel better and more. And while it's true that anyone can tell you these things which cause you to question and doubt yourself, it's particularly challenging when it is your partner and especially your spouse, since these are the people that you are sharing life and decisions with especially as they impact your salary, financial goals, benefits, etc. And we want them to feel comfortable and excited about taking these decisions. And to help illustrate what this could look like, let's outline a brief example from a client we'll call Ellie. So Ellie started a job as a consultant in 2019 and loved it from the beginning. She felt stimulated and challenged by the work and enjoyed her team dynamic. After 8 months, the leadership changed, and suddenly there was pressure to take on more and more work. Suddenly, Ellie was overworked and disconnected from what she enjoyed most about her job, working with her team, in service to more delivery of work. In February of 2021, she met her first breaking point and told her husband she wanted to leave and find jobs in a different industry that felt more aligned and people-centered. Her husband began asking her all kinds of questions like what made her qualified to do that, how she would find people to work with, what made people come to her over others. And although Ellie tried to answer his questions, her husband's doubts made her question herself enough to think it actually wasn't worth pursuing. She was so busy anyway and felt overwhelmed at the thought of looking for a new job. In June 2021, her and her husband got pregnant with their first baby and are thrilled. But it also puts more pressure on Ellie to keep her job for the health benefits, the pay, and the guaranteed maternity leave. But Ellie is growing more frustrated and despondent by the day, trying to manage her pregnancy and the stress of her job. By January 2022, a couple of months before her due date, she begins telling friends she wants to leave her job after maternity leave and how fed up she is with it. Hearing this, her husband says, No, I'm sure things will get better if you just keep talking to your boss. But Ellie is still insistent on leaving. So her husband says, well, if you do, we can't let you leave without a job lined up. So you'll have to probably go back a little bit after maternity leave. And while Ellie is frustrated, she agrees. In March 2022, Ellie gives birth to her baby boy and starts her maternity leave. 4 weeks after her son is born, her husband encourages her to begin looking for her job since he knows it will take time. Ellie spends one day searching on LinkedIn before realizing, screw it, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do my own thing. Telling her husband this, they enter into a 3-hour discussion about the specifics. I don't even understand what you're trying to do, he says. What you're doing is super huge, and we have a small baby. Ellie is insistent again that she wants to move forward and make it happen, and makes a plan and income targets, which she shows to her husband, which he supports. Have any of you guessed who Ellie is by now? She's not a client, she's me. This is actually my story and part of my journey towards leaving my previous job and going out on my own as a coach. And my husband's not a bad person. He was just genuinely trying to look out for our own interests as a family and wanted to make sure that I was doing what was best for me. But as you might have expected, the story not only has a happy ending and that I did become a successful coach with a booked out coaching practice, my husband is now one of my absolutely biggest supporters and loves telling people all about what I do and the benefits of coaching. So to illustrate our own journey and what worked for us and how we got to where we are now, let's talk to the man himself. I am so thrilled today to be joined by my husband, Mike Cretz, and together him and I will be discussing how to discuss and build engagement with your spouse as a key member of your purpose support team, how to help spouses and partners watching to understand what is needed from them and why they won't have all the answers immediately, and provide our recommendations for an optimal support team partnership moving forward. And by the end of this discussion, I want you to honestly answer one question. Can I recognize that my partner or spouse may not immediately understand or know how to support me in my purpose career journey, but through patient dialogue, expectation setting, and productive joint decision-making, it is absolutely possible. Let's get started with our discussion. I am so thrilled to welcome my first guest on Designing Purpose. I always knew if I did an interview that it was going to be my husband, Mike Cretz. So thank you so much for being part of the show today, Mike.
Of course, happy to be here.
So let's go back to the very beginning, because that's probably where a lot of people watching are going to be. Do you remember when I first talked about wanting to be a coach and what that conversation looked like?
I don't remember a specific instance of when that first came up, but I do recall a series of conversations about how the situation with your previous job just clearly wasn't sustainable. We had discussed a lot of different strategies to how to make that job potentially work for the long term and future, but I think it became increasingly clear to me that change of some sort was really necessary and that the changes weren't going to come from within that job itself. So I think it was a series of iterative conversations that started out with how can we make your job work for you or you work for your job better, and then started to then switch to what might we change more drastically that involves leaving that job and finding something else for you to do.
Yeah, absolutely. When I told you that I wanted to be a coach, which was slightly different than what I was doing previously, what were your first thoughts? What were the first things that went through your mind?
I didn't know what coaching really was because that wasn't your like official job title
Right.
in any of your previous jobs. I think you had to explain to me how what you had been doing a lot at work falls under this
Right.
umbrella term of coaching. So I think that was difficult or
Right.
took a little time for me to understand.
Right. I remember you were like, I only know what coaching is in sports. Like how do you coach now? And what's so interesting about it is that now we've sort of come full circle where we'll be watching something like a preview for something and someone will be following their dreams. And he's like, yeah, they just like work with a coach and now look where they are. How do you feel like you got to know what I did and understood better what this was going to look like?
Well, believe it or not, we talk to each other. So
Yes, talk to each other.
I think just as you started talking about what your coaching practice might look like, and I eventually it got through my head what it was.
And I know in the beginning we were very set on we just had a baby. I'm just going to transition to another job, health insurance, benefits, salary. When I said, hey, what if I did this as an entrepreneurial endeavor? What if I went out on my own? And our baby was like 8 weeks old at this time. What were those thoughts?
I think I was apprehensive at first. I think because it had never been discussed before.
Mhm.
Neither of us has any experience with doing entrepreneurship for ourselves.
And I said I was never going to be an entrepreneur. I was very adamant
Yeah, she had
about
also
it.
said that before.
Because we'd both worked with entrepreneurs a lot, and I had a lot of mental models around what it looked like and what it had to be.
Correct. So I think that was difficult to just understand why you thought that going out on your own for your business for yourself was the best option. I think I understood that a change was necessary from what you were doing with the work. I definitely didn't want you to be constantly stressed like you had been.
Yeah.
But I was also concerned, well, entrepreneurship can be really hard sometimes.
Right.
Is this change actually going to reduce your stress over the long haul? I was like, I in my mind, it seemed at first like just finding a better job with conditions that would make you happier was the better, more obvious route.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that that's where it comes back to how do you want to work? Why are you doing this? What are the contours of this going to look like? Because it's very easy to just jump back into another hamster wheel of like same crap, different day if you're not really clear-eyed about it. And I think that was definitely hard in the beginning to understand how to explain it to you, because I know that there were certain answers about or questions that you had about where are your clients going to come from and how many people are you going to work with? And do you think that there was something for you as a spouse that would have been helpful knowing that I didn't have all those answers right away?
I don't think there's anything specific. I think it was always going to be and meant to be an ongoing discussion. So I think being open to I guess listening to your ideas. And I think what I was more focused on was whether it was clear that you weren't just looking for something different's sake, but that there was a clear plan to make something happen that actually would be like a tangible improvement over what was happening previously with your work.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it was purposeful. The purposeful practice.
Right. Yeah. The title.
That's the name of my coaching practice. And I think that it's really a default for some spouses to be like, okay, this is a project now and we need to problem solve and we need to do all these things together. And this is how we figure it all out. But a lot of times we're just looking for encouragement or support or that listening ear. What guidance would you give for those people who are just wanting to problem solve or just wanting to jump in?
Well, I was lucky that I knew nothing about coaching, so I was
leading the blind.
so I was not in a position to offer suggestions or problem solve with this. I think I tried to focus the conversations as much as possible on making sure that I felt like you were aligning towards the right course of action that would really mean that you were having a career that was less stressful, more meaningful, while also meeting our household's income requirements to get by.
Yeah. That's, I think, definitely the biggest fear for people going into this is that knee-jerk reaction of, oh my gosh, you're leaving your salary. Oh my gosh, you're leaving benefits. How are we going to replace our income? How are we going to have what we need? What kinds of things do you think helped us have that financial foresight and have those financial discussions to be able to do what we did?
I guess the one piece of problem solving I did do was look at our household budgets.
Yeah,
in our
that's
household,
true.
I'm generally the one who takes a lead on management of the household finances and figure out what we could afford and what sort of timeline was doable for our family. So I think what was really helpful was not setting any strict targets in terms of your business must have this much revenue by this date, but set at least some sort of gray targets that enable us to see whether real progress is being made. So, for example, we had a 6-month target that actually wasn't quite met. So I think the expectation was, or the hope was, that the growth of the business would just be linear and constant. And that's just not how it is. It's much more uneven, the growth. So when month 6 happened and we didn't quite hit the household income target that we had set out initially, we didn't set a target to the exact penny. So there was real signs like that your business really was growing and becoming something that could be sustainable in the medium to long term. So giving the business the opportunity to grow and feel out its way in the world, I think helped. Yeah.
I think also you brought up a good point about we had contingency planning in place. It wasn't, if we don't meet these in 6 months, you're not coaching, you're going back to work. Like we tried this, too bad, it didn't work out. We were okay. If it doesn't happen at this point, then I also get a part-time job. Then we explore other income generating options that we can have while I'm going along in the business. And I think that that's very important to remember, is that you do have options. And let's say you don't hit the targets that you were hoping for in the initial run. It's not the end. It's not a spouse's opportunity to say, yeah, okay, we tried and it didn't work out, and now we're just going to move on. But I think that was something that really helped me when I'd be sort of down and like, oh shoot, it didn't happen, for you to be like, it's okay. There are other options. There are other places, which I actually didn't have to get a part-time job in the end.
Right. But I remember at around month 2 or 3, let's say, you were starting to search for part-time jobs because you weren't, it took a little while to sign your initial batch of clients with this business.
Yes.
And I pushed back and said, no, we set a 6-month target, not a 3-month target. We've worked with entrepreneurs in the past. We know that things don't happen in just 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. Stop. I remember saying to stop looking for part-time jobs. That's not where your efforts need to be focused right now. What you need to be focused on is supporting and growing your business, because that was the goal, not finding a job to make a few dollars.
Yeah.
For a little bit.
I think those sense checks were so important too, because oftentimes it's not a reflection on who you are or what you offer or how good you are, but those relationships, especially in a service-based industry like coaching, take time. And I found myself impatient. I wanted to replace my income. I wanted to, show that I could do this, that it was going to actually be viable. And so I would get to a point where I'd say like, oh, like, why isn't it happening? Why isn't it working? And Mike was a great person for me to check in with and not be like, oh my gosh, you're right, it's failing, you know, we need to do something different, but actually an opportunity for us to be patient, slow down, have perspective. And that can be really important when you're in this journey. You want someone who can kind of balance you out in that. And that was huge for us, definitely. Knowing that there's a lot of people out there who don't know anything about like entrepreneurship, starting a business, what it looks like, what is something that you would want to tell them or tell yourself at the beginning of this, knowing what we do now?
I think the most important thing, and it's cliched, is communication, talking through what the targets are, what the goals are, making sure that you stay true to the original goals and trying to be clear-eyed as possible. I think it was difficult coming from the situation you were in before where you were stressed at your job to always think clearly about what was best for the family and yourself. And I think what matters a lot and mattered in our situation was trying to be as clear-eyed and as objective as possible, because you can easily fall into the trap of anything is better, and that's not true. And also that I think what also helped us was having a long-term focus, not a short-term focus. So
Definitely long-term.
not having our income target met for a single month is not at all a big deal. But what is great for our family now is that because your business has achieved what it's achieved, we can feel comfortable going on for years to come rather than, and that's way more important than any month-to-month issues that we had at the very outset when the business was started.
I think you actually brought together two really good points about that long-term perspective and being clear-eyed and purposeful about why you're doing this in the first place. And for me, coming from a stressful job and now having a baby, I knew I needed better balance in my life. There were just too many issues that were happening that were sacrificing my own health. And I didn't want to put my child in a situation where that was going to impact him. And having that very clear vision that this is not only for me, for my family, for our general well-being, having that conviction in myself that it's going to happen. I believe in myself. Things are going to work out. And knowing that over the long term, there's infinite potential with this. And I think that too oftentimes we hold ourselves back from going after something like this because there is sometimes a short-term dip or a short-term uncertainty. But now we're set up for so many things. We might be able to travel. We might be able to live in different places, have more flexible lives, welcome more different aspects into our lives than we ever could have if I had just gotten into another job, which would have been safe and comfortable at the time. And I think that keeping that in mind too, that this can unlock so many possibilities for you and your family is really big and really, really huge. I think the last thing that I have is that I work with some people who are thinking about having children in the near future and are not sure if this is the right thing for them to do, about, you know, leaving a job that's stressful for them and going into something else or starting their own thing. How would you say the timing might be best for them?
I don't think there's any such thing as perfect timing when it comes to having kids and aligning
There really is
your
not.
career with that.
There never will be.
But I do think what is important is trying to set yourself up as parents to be as stress-free as possible.
I agree.
I definitely don't want our son to grow up in an environment where his parents are stressed out because of work. That's really important to me.
For sure.
And that's the environment I want him to grow up in. So I think making changes and strategizing and structuring the household around activities that make a welcoming environment for a child is much more important than any extra money you might be able to bring in because you're working 80 hours a day.
No, I agree. And I think that that's something really important for people to keep in mind is if you are thinking about life changes in the near future, if you are thinking about having a baby in a year or two, making a move, buying a house, it seems counterintuitive. We should just stick out our jobs until those things come. It can actually be a great opportunity for you to set yourself up in preparation for some of those changes, because then you do have more freedom, you do have more flexibility. In a lot of cases, you do have more earning potential if you're willing to commit and stick with it over time. And that can be really helpful for you. I think it was really helpful for the first year and a half of our child's life so far,
Absolutely.
and having that flexibility. All right. Well, thank you so much, Mike. I really appreciate you being on the show today. It's been so wonderful having you, and I appreciate it.
Of course.
Now that you've seen what a supportive spousal relationship to achieve your purpose looks like in action, let's go back to the question from the beginning of the episode. Can I recognize that my partner or spouse may not immediately understand or know how to support me in my purpose career journey, but through patient dialogue, expectation setting, and productive joint decision making, it is absolutely possible. In the final episode of this series, we will wrap up the purpose journey by discussing how to evolve with your purpose over time. As always, I'm so excited to be with you on this journey. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. You have been listening to Designing Purpose, your guide to finding and pursuing the career you were meant for. If you are curious to navigate the unknowns keeping you stuck in your job and confidently discover and pursue the career you were meant for, tune in every second and fourth Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time on transformationtalkradio.com, where I give straightforward and practical guidance to facilitate your next career move. For more information, visit www.thepurposefulpractice.com.